Okay, fab. Hi, everyone. Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time you're watching this, because the whole point of this is you should be able to watch it and revisit it at any time of the year. I'm Gwelumi. I don't know how else to introduce myself. I'm a poet, currently PhD final year candidate. And and I'm gonna pass the imaginary mic over to our special guest today, I'll be having this conversation on. And yeah, introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. My name is Chantelle. I'm also a PhD student, but I'm in my second year of a 4-year program. I'm excited to have this conversation. I don't know, wherever it leads, God lead us to where it needs to go. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. And just for context, this conversation is open to anyone to listen. But in case you hear us say God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, we are Christians. We're coming from a Christian worldview, but we believe everyone can glean something from this. And ultimately, we want this to be of help. And the conversation is on vision. We're currently filming this on the 21st of January, 2023, which I think is like, I'm a poet, so it's quite poetic because they say it takes 21 days to build or break a habit. And like in terms of with New Year's resolutions, they say that 80% of people do not keep them. So it's a thing of we're bringing a new perspective, probably an old one, but just bringing a different perspective to vision and vision setting. And Chantelle and I have been having like conversations here and there in the Instagram DMs
The
about
DMs, going
just
down in the DMs.
exactly this whole vision thing. So I want like you, Chantelle, to just explain what you think of vision, like how your perspective of vision setting has evolved over the years and like where you are now in your current viewpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever really sort of sat down to really think about that. I would say, I guess when it comes to vision, I think it's something that everyone sort of thinks about with like New Year's resolutions and things like that. And so I think it's always, I think that's kind of what my start is in terms of vision. I think for me, it's always been, okay, what are my goals? What are my plans? What I want to achieve? And it's always, for me anyway, I've always kind of focused it on around New Year's, just before New Year's. And I've always like written things down. And, you know, even growing up, my mum has always told me about, you know, writing things down, especially in the Bible, it says, you know, write the vision down and make it plain. And so she's always encouraged that for me. But it's not really until I've gotten older that I've kind of started to actually do that a bit more. I think I never really understood that when I was younger. I just used to think it was a bit of a waste of time, to be honest. I'm like, why am I writing it down? But yeah, I think more recently it's kind of been a thing where I'm kind of understanding the power of that, a power of writing things down and seeing things come to pass through that. And yeah, I mean, I guess I can give an example. Like last year, my health was like really, really awful. It was really, really bad. I started the year off on not a great note, to be honest. I had COVID firstly throughout Christmas. So I was ill in that respect, but also I just had a lot of underlying illnesses that kind of like were kind of bubbling under the surface for the couple years before that. But like in 2022, it was kind of like everything kind of came to a head, and I was like at the worst state as I had been for a really long time. And so I remember just thinking like, God, like I really need like a change in my health. And I remember, I don't know if you know about, I think you know about the yearly compass thing.
Yeah.
You kind of write down like your goals, or like reflect on the year and like you sort of what you want to achieve. And so I wrote down in that, you know, I want my health to be better, like I wanted to prioritize that and things like that. And I just wrote all this other bunch of stuff. And in the beginning of the year, I was like the furthest point of having like a good, healthy journey. In the first month, I fainted on the toilet I had a blood test and I was told that I had anemia. I had so many other digestive issues, nausea, pain, all this like just stuff going on. But I remember believing God for like an improvement in my health. And I couldn't remember, I had a moment one day where I wrote down a lot of stuff for kind of what I wanted to see in terms of changing my health, but I forgot about it throughout the whole year. And yeah, as the year went on, like, you know, things were still kind of looking bad. And it was only towards maybe the end of last year, towards the end of the year, that things started to get better, things were improving. And in December, I got a blood test to say that my anemia had gone. And I was so overjoyed. And then I remember I looked back on what I wrote at the beginning of the year. And then just to see the transformation in terms of where I was from the beginning of the year, where I was so hopeless, but like desperate for a change in my health. And then to come to the end of the year where it all kind of like transformed. And I wrote down that I will see like an improvement in my health and things like that. And just to see that actually like happen was just amazing. So that for me anyway, really highlighted personally like the power of really writing things down and setting a vision. And even if in that moment like you're not there yet, but really having the power to believe that that can come to pass for you it was really like just eye-opening that wow, like I really believed it, I wrote it down, and then I can see it actually happen. And thank God for like the journey that I went through, the journey that I got to being healthy wasn't what I was expecting, but I still got there. And so I think in terms of so I think I've like veered off the subject a little bit, but for me in terms of vision, kind of I guess what I see now is it's so important to write things down so that you can look back and see the transformation that's happened. So I think writing things down, the power of writing it down. But then I would say more recently, I guess in the first 21 days of this year, I've been studying the book of Proverbs, and it's been speaking a lot to me around vision, and not even just the book as well. I've been reading a lot of like books and then watching sermons, listening to podcasts and things like that. And all of it has been, if you want to get somewhere, whatever you want to do and achieve, having a set goal and a target to aim towards is important. You need to decide where you want to go, what you want to do, having that vision. But then I've been convicted of recently is that, yes, you have a vision, yes, you have a plan for yourself, but actually that can change and evolve, one, and two, like actually surrendering that to God through two, and then three, you know, we might have our own plans for ourselves, but when we commit that to God, we're saying we're trusting him to be like, okay, I have plans for myself, but actually, you know, in the word of God, it says, you know, his plans are better than his ways are higher than our ways, his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And also he has plans for us already. So it's like one thing that I've just been mulling over really is like, okay, we have our plans, but we commit them to God. It says all our ways submit to him and he will make our path straight. So it's like whatever we plan, he's going to have his hand in it and direct us to where we need to go. So yes, we have our own plans, but submit them to God and be willing to heed the instruction and the direction of which he is leading us down. So those are sort of things that I've been thinking of recently, is yes, having a vision, but being able to surrender that vision in order to outwork the plans that God has already established for us. And another thing is like, even though the plans that we have aren't going to be the ones that God wants, well, it may be different, to what God has planned for us. But at the end of the day, all the plans that God has for us are for our good and for our benefit. And the time, we might not understand it at the time, but it's just going back to the trust thing about trusting that the plans that God has for us is good, and we need to be trusting in that.
Amen. Yeah, and thank you for sharing as well, and thank you for being so vulnerable. As someone who's like gone through health stuff as well, I so relate in that whole thing of the power of vision in terms of writing it down, but then sometimes the reality of, you mentioned in that first month fainting on the toilet or something like that,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
wild.
the thing of this is what you want, but then the reality is not lining
So
up.
different. Yeah.
And I think there's such a powerful take home in that, in the sense of when being adaptable, I guess, is one thing, but in terms of not just reducing, I think we've mentioned this before in our conversation, not just reducing goal setting or vision setting to just one moment or one day, but like continuously reviewing. So like, I was saying how I'm going to provide like a workbook in the link, however this is going to be posted, but to people who are watching this, if they want to work through it. But the whole idea behind the workbook is 4D vision. Sorry, I'm such a like creative. 4D vision, like it's all in your decisions. Because for instance, using that health thing, for example, sometimes what happens is we can write our goals down, we can create our cute vision board, have it as a screensaver on our phone or our laptop and stuff, and then just leave it there, and be like, oh, I'm seeing it all the time, but what are we actually doing to work towards it? And I don't mean chasing the vision. I don't mean like you're constantly running after it, like there's a carrot in front and you're running, but what decisions can I make intentionally to live in the vision now? To live in the vision in the now, because I think part of the issue why we often break our resolutions or break the habits is we're so future focused that we're ignoring the present and we're not being radically honest about where we are now. And it's a thing of, I've been in the book of James, and this is sort of what this whole 4D vision is based on, James chapter 4. And like in verse 3, it says, you ask and don't receive because you ask with wrong motives, so that you may spend it on your pleasures. And it really got me thinking, like, what are these wrong motives? And like the Bible commentary I have was saying, when the kingdom of God and the needs of others are not factored in, that's when there's the wrong motive, right? And it got me even thinking more that, okay, as I was reviewing, I've still not made my vision board because I've just been like reviewing and re-reviewing my goals. Like, okay, why do you want these things, right? Is it because of things or pressures from social media or your peers, which there can be good pressure, right? There can be benefits in a healthy competition, but there's that unhealthy side? Or is it because this is something you not only genuinely want, not for the sake of wanting, but the sake of a cause greater than you, and something greater than you, that it's, for instance, if you say a goal is to pay off your debt, right? It's not just for the sake of paying off your debt. Is, okay, once it's done, I can be a blessing to others. I can freely give, I can freely help, and have the freedom to do so without an element of guilt or an element of, oh my gosh, I don't have enough. Or is a thing of, I want to cultivate an abundant mindset, right? Now we can look at that huge number, whatever the number is debt-wise, and think, oh my gosh, this is so big, and you're focusing so much on the future. Or you can shift and say, okay, what decisions can I make now? Even if it's just getting into a habit of, I may get £10 from an uncle or auntie, let me tithe an amount. It might be, is £1. Put £1 into like giving to the church or charity, put maybe £1 or £2 into a saving account, and then a portion, and just get into the habit of practicing saving, giving, and like a budgeting even with that small amount, and not thinking it's too small, because it compounds, right? So even on that whole thing of the wrong motives, we'll get onto the whole committing and surrendering to God a bit later on. But in terms of these wrong motives, what are your thoughts on what some other wrong motives could be, and how maybe you've addressed them so that you're living in the now, even with that future focus of vision.
Yeah, I think that's so good. You literally said so many great things as well that my mind is like, what do I say in response to like first? Like so many great things. Yeah, I would touch on the motive. I think it's so good that when you set a goal or have a plan, cast out a vision, what is your heart posture behind that? Like you said, like you need to know, because is it for yourself? Is it some sort of self pride that you're trying to gain as a result of getting something, especially like with material possessions and stuff? Is it supposed to be, oh, I want to stunt for the gram, so that's why I want this? Like actually establishing the why behind it is so important, because then that will allow you to provide the energy to strive correctly and work intentionally in achieving that. I also think it will allow you to have the patience and the grace to achieve that as well. I think a lot of the times when we do set goals and cast vision, we do have a set way of like how we envision that actually happening as well. And so there can be a lot of frustration that can come with that when it's not aligning to that set path that we imagined in our head in order to achieve that goal as well. So I think, yeah, establishing the motive behind it is amazing, is really, really good. In terms of bad motives, I think, yeah, anything that is of like selfish ambition to like boost yourself up, to be like, yeah, I did that. And I think in terms of being able to achieve that, if your motive is, oh, look what I was able to do for myself, I think that's a really bad sort of heart posture and motive to have. I think understanding how it's going to be beneficial, like you said, be blessed to be a blessing. And I actually wrote that down today as well. It's like, you know, what thing is that going to help to benefit others? Like if you want to achieve something, how is that going to then, you know, help others in terms of, is it going to be beneficial for your family, for your friends and things like that? Like, for example, one sort of, I guess, goal, okay, I'm going to scarily put that out there for me this year, but I want to be able to pass my driving lesson and hopefully get a car. And again, it's not to be like, oh, look at me, I can drive, but it's more to be like, one, it's going to be so beneficial for me that I can travel. I mean, I'm out of London at the moment, so being able to travel in and out of London, but also to help my mum as well. Like, you know, she doesn't drive, she goes out quite a lot, and, you know, transport can be quite annoying when you go to like certain places and things like that. But my wife being able to achieve this goal for me is to help myself ease of commuting, but also to help my mum as well ease for her commute and support her in that aspect as well. So I think, yeah, having that sort of wider understanding that your goals aren't always just to benefit you and how it reflects on you, but also kind of how that can support other people, whether it's someone relationally close to you or just others as well, in terms of, okay, another goal, I guess for me, if I wanted to drive, it can be like, oh, I want to be able to help, you know, maybe a neighbor go do their grocery shopping or things like that. Like how I think just having an outward perspective and not just the selfish aspect of it, I think is important. I think that's the main thing, really. I don't think I can think of anything else where it's like sort of not good motives. But I think, yeah, just understanding how the influence and impact that goal can have on others and not just yourself. I mean, it's definitely good to have it for yourself as well, but I think, yeah, just making sure that it's not something where you're conflating your own ego in order to achieve that goal.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, because I was going to say all of our goals start off selfish. Like we're not here sitting self-righteous, like, oh, all of our goals are selfless. No, like it does start off in a sense selfish, but then in terms of reviewing, in terms of when you go deeper into the why, you evolve this, you put or add that other dimension of selflessness, because that also influences and it informs your desired behavior, because it's like goals to what end, vision to what end, and it's a way of making it fulfilling. So I guess in a sense the selflessness is a selfish reason, but like I'm being honest in terms of, I'm like, this is us speaking within the process, not like we know also.
If you have, we're still learning
we're
ourselves.
still learning. So if you have other comments, like please comment,
Yeah.
whoever's watching this. But it's that whole thing of when you fulfill the goal, when you get to that goal, that vision, the thing that makes it fulfilling is oftentimes that it's outside of you. And you see like, okay, there's a point for me, like I've shared on Instagram that I've had to extend my my thesis deadline. Now I had to come to a point of radical honesty in terms of what factors outside of my control got me here. I'm one of the pandemic PhD crew in the sense of like shout out all of us. But it's also a thing of like, another element is what factors within my control also got me here and how can I learn from it? But it also brought up another question of, and I think this comes up for people who do a PhD before, during, sometimes after, that, okay, why do I want this PhD, right? So it's beyond just having the doctor title. And oftentimes in these moments, in tough moments, in moments where you want to quit, in moments of relative failure, you ask, do I actually still want this? Why do I want this? And get into the why and the driving factor that's often outside of yourself. When you sometimes fail yourself, helps you keep going. So
and that's why it's important to have that why as well, because like you say, there'll be moments where you'll be questioning, like, is this worth it? Like, do I really need this? And it's that why that drives that continuous motivation to achieve.
Especially if it's a fitness goal.
Oh
my gosh, one of my fitness goals is, like, I have an overall theme. So I've approached vision very differently this year, which I'll touch upon in a bit. But one of the fitness stuff is that I've restarted Couch to 5K. Now, this England this week has been very cold.
Trust you, minus numbers.
Oh my gosh, there have been times when I was like, our bed is very comfortable, it's very warm in here. But then having that deeper why of, I'm not just doing this to be like, yeah, I completed 5K. No, it's a thing of my overall health and my well-being. It's more than cold. And I'm not gonna lie, there were days, especially near the start, where I didn't do a day or something. But then there was one day this week that I think was a real shift for me in terms of mindset and like the desired behavior I wanted to cultivate. And I didn't go in the morning, woke up late, had to do an assessment, all of that stuff. So the time wasn't there. So old me would have written it off, like, oh, you can go tomorrow now. Like, it's all right, grace, all of that stuff. But it got to the evening and I was just like, I can do it in the evening. And instead of jogging to the park because it's dark, I can jog around the estate. Now I layered up, put on my gloves, and went out. And there were points during so Couch to 5K, for those who don't know, is like a coach in your ear. And there are times you run, times you walk. There were times when I was just like, who even begged you? Like, why are you doing this? But when I finished, I was just like, wow, there was just this shift behavior-wise. So again, going back to the whole thing of you're continuously reviewing and you'll continuously surprise yourself as well. But let's do you have anything to add before I pivot?
I was just going to say, I think you touched on a really nice example there as well. It's kind of going back to when you have a goal and a set plan in place or cast a vision, sometimes in your mind you have a set idea of how it's going to happen. So for you, it's like you were going to do your training in the morning, and then you missed one morning and you're like, oh, what do I do? And it's like you changed it, you pivoted, and it's like you still achieved your goal, you just did it slightly differently to how you thought. And so I think, it's not having that fixed idea of it can only be achieved in one way, and then if you don't do it that way, like, hands up, I failed, sort of thing. It's like, no, like, let's review, how can we pivot, how can we change to still achieve the goal that you set out, just in a different way. And I think just having a bit of an open mindset as well is important, to be like, okay, let's continuously review, let's kind of refine and, change. And, if we need to do it another way, if we need to go a little bit round the bends and not a straight line as what we thought we were going to go down, then let's do that. There's no harm in that. And so I think, just it's being open to it. The path to the goal can look different as you're on the journey. So
the path to the goal can look different. And this segues nicely into like how we can have our own plans, but what does it look like in terms of surrendering and committing them to God and letting go? And it's a thing of, so I mentioned how I've approached visioning a bit different. I don't know if my bullet journal is anywhere nearby, but no, it's not. But it's a thing of, I have like different categories, and it'll be clear in the handbook. I have like different categories, and being me or being anyone, sometimes you feel like, oh, I must have like 4 goals for each one, and it can be so overwhelming, like super overwhelming. So you start off with that, and even using the year compass helped you like put everything down. But then when you group them into categories and you're like, okay, what's actually realistic? And even when you have those 3 and 4, you can be like, actually, what is the overall theme or the common thread between these 3? So in terms of fitness, don't laugh, fitness, I was gonna be like, my overall theme for fitness this year is thick with 2 C's.
Okay.
Functionality. But the reason I said thick functionality is like, okay, I want to be more body confident in terms of like, okay, things fit. I went through a lot health-wise. Again, near the end of the year, I was in A&E, lost so much weight dramatically in the sense of like not being able to keep food or water down. So even with the whole thick with 2 C's, it's not a thing of just vanity. It's like, okay, I want, there's something about thick with 2 C's. There's a confidence, there's a sassiness, there's a like, okay, this is my body in this state now, and I want to develop a healthy relationship with it. But then the functionality aspect is, yes, I'm working out. Yes, I'm wanting to be better in terms of cardiovascular health, in terms of like, that's why I'm doing jogging. I want to later on do swimming when it's in the warmer quarter, and just different things like home workout. What can I do now? Gym membership is not in my budget for this quarter, in all honesty, but I can go on YouTube and all of that stuff. But the functionality bit is, yes, there's an aspect of vanity, but I want to be healthier. I want to be able to sustain my lifestyle. I want to be able to run for the bus and not be huffing and puffing. I want to eat and enjoy my food and not be thinking all of this, that, and the other. So having that overall theme helped me a lot, just to simplify and see the commonality. Then I broke things down by quarter, in terms of, I think quarter is a lot healthier, in my opinion, in terms of every January, February, March, every 3 months, every 3 months, in terms of it gives that space to adapt, to actually make sure you set that habit in place, instead of like by the end of this month, and it takes off a bit of pressure, but it still keeps you focused on a certain goal. And each quarter has a goal related. So like I said, couch to 5K this month, home workouts next quarter, swimming when it's warmer. And by the end of the year, by God's grace, gym will be in that budget. But by that point, I've built up the habit of regularly and consistently exercising, building that discipline. So by the time gym comes, I will use my gym membership, right? Or the leisure center membership, in the sense of I'm not putting it to waste. So setting that overall theme, breaking it down per quarter, and also just like being realistic about what can I do now, where I am now and where I want to be, has helped. And it links to James 4 verse 15, where it says, instead you should say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. So what led up to that point is that sometimes we arrogantly say, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but we don't know what is coming next. But I don't think any of us could have predicted the pandemic. We don't know what's going to happen, like in terms of, you may say fitness wise, I want to do this, then God forbid, but something can happen health-wise that sets you back. How will you now adapt? If you've now put like 3 goals for 1 month, right? So what is a healthy way of, and you hinted at this in terms of having that goal, but being flexible with the path and journeying with God. But what is a healthy way of having your own plans and surrendering and committing them to God, but not being, I don't know, lazy in denial?
Wow. Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. I think firstly, with you breaking down your goals and looking at them quarterly, I think it's great. There's a book which I haven't read, but a lot of these like YouTube girlies and influencers and stuff who talk about like achieving your goals and things like that, they always talk about this book, the 12-week year
Oh my
by
gosh, yeah, I've
James
seen that.
Clear. Yeah, which is basically the premise of kind of what you were saying in terms of, yeah, having the sort of overall goal, but breaking it down into simple steps that you can achieve and looking at them at a quarterly basis. So breaking down the year per quarter. And again, it's like you're not putting much pressure to be like, oh, I need to achieve this by month, but it gives you enough sort of bandwidth to achieve what you want to achieve. But then also you're scheduling like regular time points throughout the year to reflect, refine, and keep going and be malleable. So I think, yeah, that's probably one thing, is like setting time regularly. And, you know, it can be different for everyone. It depends on what you want to do and how effective it is for you. I don't think there's like one way to do everything. It just kind of what works for you. I've been listening to like John Maxwell's podcast as well this week, and he was saying for him, like I think it was John Maxwell or someone else, I think also Damon John, who's like an investor and an entrepreneur in the US. And I think both of them were saying like they review their goals like every week or so. And it's like, if that works for them, that works for them. But I think, and then some people might do it every month and some people might do it every quarter. I think for me this year, I wanted to do it like every month. And so I think just having like scheduling regular time points, no matter what that looks like for you, but also just kind of looking back, okay, what have I achieved? How are things going? You know, is this working? Because again, you might think, oh, I have a plan, but you know, I can't physically outwork that plan. It doesn't work for me. So it's like, how can I refine and adjust to then make it work for me? And so, yeah, I think just having regular scheduling and checking in on yourself and reflect and refining. But also, I think you said about surrendering to God. And I think, again, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier as well, in terms of we have our own plans, but you know, in the Bible says this, the plan, like, you know, there's plan, people have their plans in their heart, but like the Lord establishes them steps. The Lord's plans for our life are going to prevail. And I even read, I think as well, let me just read what I wrote, but it was towards the end of the Proverbs that I read today, and it was like, there is no wisdom, no insight, no plan that can succeed against the Lord. That's Proverbs 21:30. And it's like, yeah, we're gonna have whatever we want to do, but at the end of the day, like the Lord is gonna have his way, like no matter what. And so I think there it's important to, what do I want to say? It's important to be okay that things are going to change and not look like what you set out. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It's also not a bad thing to have plans as well. I think that's one thing that kind of I got convicted with like this week. It's like, you know, if the Lord's plan is going to, you know, happen regardless of what I want, what's the point? But, and again, I remember hearing this analogy years ago, and it wasn't even from a Christian, he said this, but I just loved it so much. It was like, you literally cannot move a stationary car. You know, it's harder to move a stationary car than it is to move a moving car. And so I feel like it's so loving and grateful for God to allow us to even have plans, to exercise our own free will, to set out goals for ourselves. But at the same time, you know, we need to surrender to that and have trust that, you know, okay, Lord, like, this is what I want, but like, you know, I have full trust in you that, you know, in Jeremiah 29:11, he has plans for us that are good. And so I trust that whatever you have for me is good. This is what I want, Lord, but, you know, establish myself, guide me in what I should do. And in Proverbs as well, which I've been reading, it talks a lot about heeding instruction, getting counsel, getting advice, and all that sort of stuff. And I just think, you know what, like, yeah, we're going to have our plans, but at the end of the day, like, we need to listen to God and be like, okay, if he convicts us to be like, actually, this is what you need to be doing, like do it, like, kind of heed that instruction and not fight against it, and trust in the Lord that, you know, he knows better. We can't lean on our own understanding, you know, like, he sits out of time and he sees everything, and we just need to do our part, but allow God to do the rest. I think that's one thing that I'm just like, you know what, like, I'm going to do what I can, but allow room for you to have your way in my life. And so I think just having that space to be like, this is my thing, Lord, like, you do what you need to do to essentially fulfill the plans and the will that he has, not just for us, but also just for the rest of humanity, people in our lives and things like that. And it's like, you don't know that what you are needing to do is going to have so much influence into enable someone else to do what they need to do and things like that. Like, it's all connected. And so, yeah, I think just having the sort of openness and heart posture to enable that. And when I was reading Proverbs 17 this week, where twice it's all about how, like, having our own plans, but allowing the Lord, or the Lord's, like, will establish your steps and the Lord's plan will prevail. Like, it says that twice in that chapter. I was thinking about, when I read that book, when I read that chapter, I was thinking about the verse where it says, not my will, but your will be done. And growing up in church, like, I know, like, different verses, things like that, but I didn't, when I was thinking about that verse, I couldn't recall kind of where it was or what the context was. So I was like, hey, let me look at it. And literally, I was so convicted when I realized that that was Jesus saying that to God when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, just before he was about to get crucified. And I was literally, like, shook. Like, it really, like, stopped me in my tracks. I was like, wow, like, if Jesus, the person who had the power to not go to the cross, to stop that from happening, and he even knew, like, what was going to come after that and the benefit of him going through that process, yeah, still, like, he didn't want to do that. He had his own plan. He was like, Lord, if you are willing, take this cup away from me. He couldn't bear the pain in that moment, but he said, but not my will, but your will be done. And I was like, wow, like, if Jesus, the person who is all-knowing, all-powerful, had the power to stop that from happening, and he didn't even want that to happen to himself. He knew it. He knew what was going to happen at the other end, but he didn't want to go through it. And he still surrendered what he wanted for God's will. And I think for me, when I saw that, I was just blown away. I was like, wow, like, yeah, like, if Jesus had to do that, like, why not us? So yeah, it's been a lot of things that I've been thinking out about that, but that, for me anyway, this week in particular, like, reading that, understanding the context of that, and yeah, it blew my mind. I saw it in a new light. Like, again, like, you know, I've grown up in a Christian household, I've grown up going to church, but that, for me, reading that this week was like, whew, like, yeah, we have our plans, but we really need to surrender them to God and know that the benefit of whatever God wants us to do, like, whatever he wants to outwork in our lives, is going to be a betterment, not for us, but also people around us. And so yeah, I think it's something that I'm still sort of trying to understand and learn as well. And yeah, like, kind of what you said earlier, we're not perfect, we're still learning, we're still trying to understand. But I think for me, that really was like a really massive eye-opener for me. So I think there's nothing wrong with having vision. And I think God wants us to have vision. You know, it even says, you know, without a vision, the people perish and things like that. But I think, again, being malleable to how how it actually happens and plays out. It might not be what we expect, it might not be what we want, but if we commit and surrender that to God, and again, it's through having that regular dialogue with him. You know, when Jesus said, "Not my will, but your will," he was praying to God, you know, and so we need to, and again, I guess with the regular sort of check-ins, check in with God as well. Check in, God, is this still our plan? You know, do you still want me to do this? Things like that, having that regular dialogue, well, not with yourself, but with God as well. And so yeah, I think for me anyway, that's something that I am wanting now after sort of reading that and sort of reflecting on that and still trying to learn kind of what that really means. Yeah, I think that aspect of it is really important.
And you said so many like gems in terms of even that point on Jesus coming to things with a posture of humility, in the sense of like, I don't know it all, but being open to, you also highlighted, open to wise counsel. And I think that's really a posture that helps us to live the vision in our daily decisions, and oh, that rhymed, to live the vision in our daily decisions and not be chasing the vision to the point of missing out on what God is doing in the now. And you brought up the powerful thing of prayer. Like, regular check-ins, reviews are so powerful, whether that's daily, whether that's monthly, weekly, quarterly. I think there are different levels in which you can review. There are different levels you can do that review. Sometimes I have just a weekly reflect and review over the whole week, but it's not like in depth in terms of my goals. Or you can have like a monthly, like you said, in terms of the overall, okay, where are we? How, like, what were we expecting? Why are we here? All of that, or quarterly. But then also just those daily decisions and those daily check-ins with God in prayer, at the end, at the start of the day, at any point of the day. And I read this powerful quote by Tony Evans. I've written it here. It says, to pray is to invite to the involvement of eternity into time. And it's that whole thing of inviting God's involvement within our plans, because again, we exercise our free will. God is a gentleman. He's not gonna force anything. He's like, we invite him in, and we also communicate our needs. And even as we communicate and align with his plans, we often find out what he has planned for us is a lot better and it's a lot greater. And that brings me on to like another part of reviewing and reflecting that I think we forget to do, and that's gratitude and celebration. Like, we don't have to wait for the massive things to celebrate, right? Another thing I have in my bullet journal alongside reflection and review is weekly wins. And this started off as something for me last year. I wanted to be intentional in celebration. So what I will do is I made a little celebration tracker. You know, people have a habit tracker. So celebration tracker, and it'll be like, okay, what was that one thing? First, it started like one thing in the month. Then I got into the habit of noticing the little things even more. And it could be celebrating, like, watch your favorite movie, or watch this thing, or like take time to make a new recipe as a way of celebrating. I'm a foodie. Take time to make a new recipe as a way of celebrating, or like do something with a friend as a way of celebrating. But there's such a spiritual discipline in celebration and gratitude, because not only are you taking time to be grateful for the situation, for the seemingly little, but you're also recognizing God's hand at work through praising him and recognizing, okay, God, like, you're working in the little miracles. It doesn't have to be when I have like graduation, you know, we have the big moments, or, you know, we have a thing of humans of like the big moments, whether it's wedding, whether it's like, I don't know, birthdays and stuff. But what are the weekly and daily things we are maybe missing out on because we're so future focused in terms of those big wins that we can celebrate now? Like, girl, I celebrate. I was just like, yes, a weekly win. I got out on that Wednesday and I did it in the evening instead of the morning. And that's a point of celebration. And it does a lot for our mind and our mindset as well, cultivating that habit. So that was something that I think we miss out in reviewing and reflecting. That is so powerful. Yeah.
It's so good. And it helps with like motivation as well when you're trying to achieve, I guess, that big thing. Again, it's a perspective shift. It's like, instead of like, oh no, I haven't achieved this, you look back and like, oh, but these are all the things that I have done so far. And, let's celebrate that. And let's look at, oh, actually, like you said, with your example, I didn't go in the morning, but I went in the evening, but I still did it. And it's like, that is a win because, maybe before you would have not even bothered. You're like, oh, I missed my chance now. Like, what am I going to do now? But no, you did that. And it's like, again, it's like you've gone so far, it kind of spurs you on to be like, hey, yes, I've gone so far and I can go even further and stuff. And so, yeah, it is that mindset shift. It is that perspective change. And yeah, instead of, again, it's good to be futuristic. It's good to look ahead and be like, okay, this is what I'm striving towards and this is what I want to keep going. But I think it reduces your frustration that you haven't achieved that goal yet. And you're like, look back and like, oh, okay, I've done all these things, amazing, that's so good. Like, just boost your confidence a bit more. And it's like, yes, if I can achieve this, then I will be able to achieve that. And so again, it helps with you not looking down on yourself as well, the fact that you haven't achieved that thing yet. Again, like the way you speak to yourself is so important. And it's like, yeah, just that perspective change, where it's like, okay, I've done it before and it's going to happen, that big thing, I can achieve it because I've achieved all these other things as well. So
Definitely so powerful. And yeah, thank you for engaging in this conversation, because I think I'm gonna even look back and bring out my notepad as well and make some notes. But to end this, as you know, I like to freestyle, and I did not prep you for this at all.
No, I'm not freestyling, you are there, right?
Oh yeah, I am. Unless you want to.
Oh no, I'm good girl.
But as you know, I'm doing this challenge with the rule of thirds.
Yes, I've been seeing on your Instagram.
And yeah, I'm responding in different ways. So just said, why not do it now in this convo?
Okay.
Yeah. So the theme for today is anticipate, right? Which I thought,
oh, I think that's pretty good fitting.
Yeah, good fit. And I'm just like, God, what are you up to? Okay. Cool. And I guess let's see, how should we do this? If you can give me 3 prompts. I'm not going to limit you in terms of what the prompts are, but if you give me 3 prompts, and then I can freestyle around that topic and feed your prompts in, and we can end the conversation with that.
I'm actually so excited because I always see you asking people for prompts, and I've never been involved. Like, sometimes I miss your lives or things like that. So yeah, oh my gosh, I think my prompts are good. Okay, because I know sometimes you do a color and object, so I'm going to try and do like what you normally do.
No, you can also do what I don't normally do.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. One word that was inspiring me was sky. And then sky, rainbow, and okay, it's a random one. I just came to mind. Mosquito.
Oh, mosquito. Okay. I love it. Okay. Sky, rainbow, and mosquito. Cool. And the theme is anticipate. Okay. If the sky were a canvas, I wouldn't do something cheesy like paint a rainbow. No. I'll be more mosquito, anticipating what is ahead. I will fly through, scouting what could be. But then I will not just stay there, will not just daydream about how it could be cloudy with a chance of meatballs. will not dance upon rainbow's edge, going from red to orange to green to blue, forgetting the order of the colors. I will not wait for leprechaun at the end of it with the pot of gold, but I will make my own gold. I will see that human skin and say, this is mine for choosing. This is my pickings. This is what I will go forward and take a bite. I will look at their skin react and see how the bite has made a mound of possibilities, a mound of blood vessels wanting to be free, and I will go again. I wouldn't see it as, oh, stop at one site, but I will make my mark on one side of the arm and then the other. I will bite, I will anticipate, I will see my vision as something to be lived in the now. Then I will fly off again. I will meet my friends, celebrate my picking, my choosing, my victory. And though the human may wake up scratching and itching, at least it remembered me. At least when it looks at the rainbow's edge, it will also think of my bite, my scratch, of the heat of the country that they have visited. They will tell stories where I will be integrated in. They may not know my name, but they will call me Mosquito, and how this country left me with X amount of marks. But I know I have left my imprint in history in some way, somehow. And I will pray that they do too, and have that same hunger and thirst to not look for pots of gold at the end of the rainbow, but make it in the here and the now. Thank you.
Dang.
I hope that makes sense. Thank you for that was a good challenge. I was just like, where would that go? Where would that go? So everyone, I guess I've just said, be a mosquito. I don't know. We'll make it work poetically, but be a mosquito.
No, that was sick. That was sick. Well done. Wow. You did well. You did well.
Let's see if I listen back to this and don't cringe. But yeah,
No, I loved it.
Thank you so much for the prompt. Thank you for this conversation as well. And for those watching, whether it's Instagram, you may just see the freestyle, but this full conversation is going to be on YouTube. It is on YouTube if you are watching on YouTube. But also check out the link in the bio. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, I would have uploaded the workbook. It's free, and you should be able to do this at any time of the year. Remember that vision, it's all in your decisions, and it's a thing of making it a thing of being adaptable, flexible, and committing it to God. Or if you're not a Christian, being flexible with it. So yeah, thank you so much, Chantelle. Have a good rest of the day.
Me. Thanks. Enjoy your day too.
You too. Bye.
See ya.